All right, welcome back to the shop. So in my last video, I tore apart this Cat 735 transmission. We pulled the transmission unit off of the torque converter and we took apart all 6 packs. The only thing I didn't show in that video was taking apart pack number 1, which you can see right here. This light's terrible with this door open. These little tiny discs. There's not damage on them, but this transmission, I know the history of this transmission and of this rock truck, and these discs in here have got to be about 19 years old. It's a 2005 truck, and I know the history on it. The truck only has 8,000 hours on it, and so most of the discs are damaged anyway, so I'm going to just replace all the discs, including number 1, just because they're so crusty looking. They look like they've gotten hot, and some of the plates have some heat marks on them and stuff. And the color of the material is really dark, so I'm going to change all that. So putting all that aside today, what we're going to do today, we're going to pull the housing off, the torque converter housing off of the torque converter, and then we'll disassemble the torque converter, and that way you guys can kind of see how that comes apart and what's inside there. So what we do to begin with, there's a bolt right here. There's 4 of those bolts, you know, all the way around it. And what those do is there's a separator plate inside the torque converter that keeps the oil on the transmission side of the torque converter. So the output side, the flywheel side, is a dry sump one. The bell housing doesn't have oil sitting in it like some do. Like the 740 transmission, it's a wet sump. You know, in the engine, so the outside of the torque converter has oil on it. This one stays dry. So those bolts, let me see if I can get in here. Here's another one right here. These are what hold that plate in place. And when I go to assemble it, I'll show you guys how that goes too. It's kind of cool in a way. It could be a pain in the butt too, but it's not a big deal. So we're going to pull those out. We're going to pull these Allen bolts out of here, and then we're going to lift this housing off. That's all that's holding this housing on there. And then once we get this housing off, we'll set it aside, and you'll be able to see the torque converter assembly, and then we'll take it apart, and we'll see what the lockup clutch looks like, and just make sure, you know, make sure we didn't get any damage from debris. Because in this transmission, I talked about it, that number 5 clutch, number 2 clutch were burned out, and then that reaction plate was broken, and the number 5 clutch manifold was destroyed. As I went through and kind of triaged different parts, I noticed a lot of these small planetary gears they had debris go through them. So I'm going to be changing all 6 of these planetary gears. I'm going to be changing the 4 planetary gears in here. This hub right here that rides on a planetary, you can see the damage inside here, and then the discs right on the outside. Got to replace that. So I found a lot of damage in here. The gear right here, this double gear on this shaft, has damage. I have to replace that. So hopefully this torque converter didn't get a lot of damage inside. Hopefully it's just going to be seals and a disc. So anyways, let's get to it. Go ahead.
Is that not 1 inch?
I think it's 1 inch.
Does it need a chrome?
Yeah, you might need a chrome socket to make it easier. There, not a whole lot of room on that one. The other 3 aren't so bad. It's just that one's got. All right, let me see that bolt. So here's what that bolt looks like. It's got this taper on the end, and when you first assemble it, you lay that plate over the torque converter, and it has a lip seal on it and an O-ring seal on the outside. And then when you set this housing down over the torque converter, that plate's not quite in the right spot. You have to stick a bar or a screwdriver in there and kind of pry it down, and then you put these in, and that taper is what sets it in its place. You can see the marks on here from previous times that it's been apart. You can see actually a flat spot there where the plate's been riding on there. And we'll make a new pile for this torque converter stuff over here. That washer's probably hanging on there. That's all right, we'll get it later. Go.
This came off of that.
That's a little bit of sealant. Yeah, we put sealant on these. Actually, looks like it had Loctite on it. You can put Loctite or sealant on it. Yeah, these are weird. I've never seen them with these flat spots etched into it. It's got it on both sides too. Kind of strange.
Yeah, the other ring ends on there. So, where's the other one?
It's down over here. Somewhere? Oh, right here. That's why I have to take off that filter pressure relief valve. All right, we'll fish those out of the tub later. All right, so those 4 are off. Now we just have to get an Allen socket, and we'll pull these out. Got one more. All right, I'll start the hydraulic pump here, and then we'll get that thing lifted off. All right, so they actually call this the pump drive, is what the Cat parts book calls it. Crap in there, because the steering pump rides off here, the hydraulic pump rides off here, the transmission pump's up inside of here as well, and then the filter goes in here. Yeah, you go ahead and just set it right here. So that's officially called the pump drive. It's got 3 gears in it, and the hydraulic pump, or the transmission pump. Keep it as close to that as you can, up towards you. Just boom up and get it over that way. Yeah, right there. After we get the torque converter apart, then we'll flip this over, get all this oil mopped out first. We'll flip it over, and then we'll take the pump off and go through the pump, make sure that it's okay. All right, now for the torque converter itself. In the previous video, you guys saw me take the hub off the other end and 2 of the bolts out of that shaft. We just have to, we'll put a bar in here or something. We'll pull this over on its side, and then we have to remove that 1 bolt, and then we can slide this shaft out, and then the solid shaft, and pull this intermediate shaft out. And then we're gonna take out every one of these bolts along here. Why is this colored like that? That is so weird. Oh, you know what that is? That's clutch material from the lockup clutch that was escaping out of here through the bolts. Once we get in here, you'll be able to see it. The threads on these are going to be full of clutch material, and there's going to be a bunch of clutch material in there from those, and this centrifugal force just runs it out of there. It's the strangest thing. So anyways, we'll get all those bolts out, we'll get that cover off, and then once we pull the hub and impeller out of there, then we pull all these bolts off, and we'll pull this outer housing off, and then the lockup clutch will be down inside there. So these take a 16 millimeter socket, or 5/8. And since Alex is doing it, Mr. Frenchie here, we'll use a 16 millimeter.
Yeah.
Make him feel at home.
Thank you.
And I'll pretend it's a 5/8. So we put that link bracket on there so I could grab it like a handle and flip this over. I couldn't film it because it took all I had to lift that up. And then Alex pulled this off. So here's what that looks like. So there's this concave washer in here. It's actually a spring. And then that bolt, here's a retainer. When you put this together, you have to torque that to the exact spec, because that's a spring. And if you over torque it, you can screw things up. If you leave it loose, it's going to come apart. All right, so looking at this, I could tell I was not the last one in here, because some of these washers are upside down. With my ADHD and my OCD combined, I would never put that washer upside down. There's a few of them that are upside down. All right, so now that we have all those out, I took 2 of the bolts, took the washers off them, and put them in these forcing holes, and we'll just run it real gently with the impact, and go ahead and slide that off after we pull out this gear and get that hub off of there. Go and grab that hub. And that shaft. But just grab the gear at the end first. Just grab the end, the very end of the spline.
Oh.
Lay it over here. And then grab that hub. I think that hub slides out of there. Might not until we pull it apart. Yeah, it does. It slides out. Now go ahead and run those forcing screws in. It'll lift that plate off. Just be gentle, so make sure it starts to lift it. That top plate's only aluminum, so if you run those in too hard, it's hung up, it can break it. There you go. Go ahead and lift that off and just lay it down over here. Lay it in the shadow so the filming looks like crap.
Okay.
Yeah, flip it over and then just set it over here right by the shaft. Keep everything out of the way and together. And so one thing we'll do when we're in here is we'll test this to make sure it's not cracked. You take these aluminum rings, and if you just tap them on the ground, if they're cracked, you'll get a definite thud sound. But if they're okay, you'll get a ring. In fact, you can kind of hear it's ringing just hitting it. So it's not cracked. If it was cracked, it would just be a thud. But I'll double check it anyways. And then go ahead and pull this rotor out, or this impeller out. Rotor? Stator. I think that's a stator. You gotta be careful with it because there's a shaft in here that can slide out, and it's got the one-way lock pins in there. I'll have to show that in the... I probably won't even show that in the video, I don't know. And then now pull that rotor out. And then dump the oil out before you lift it out, like before you take it out. Get it in the tub. Go ahead and lay that in that tub there. Move that stator into there too, just so it doesn't get oil all over the place. It's going to dribble for a day. So we'll go ahead and we'll inspect those later. And most likely there's nothing wrong with them, but we are going to double check them. So now what we have inside here, here's the spline of the lockup clutch. And like I was talking about in that previous video, this only has this one clutch. So when this truck is loaded, you've got 140,000 pounds plus or minus going up and down the haul road, and it's all locked up on that one clutch. Stupidest thing Cat ever did on these. So we're gonna pull all like 26 of those bolts out, or however many, and then we'll pull that top housing off.
Yeah, I got one more.
All right, one more bolt. All right, now grab two of those without washers, and then there's a forcing hole here, and then one on 180 degrees across. This one has an O-ring on it too. See, this aluminum one had an O-ring. So that one's got an O-ring as well. All right, go ahead and lift that off. Just lay it in that other tub on top of that rotor or whatever that thing is. All right, so this is the lockup disc. It all rides on this. It's actually got quite a bit of meat left. I was expecting to see this thing to be almost smoked, but it's got a lot of steel in this oil. Let's see the shiny. So this disc, even if it's spec'd out, I'm going to change it anyways. Every single time one of these transmissions is in here, unless it's got 100 hours on it, I change this disc, because this disc is a pain in the butt. It all rides on that. And a little bit of water in there too, probably when they cleaned it. And then this is the piston right in here. So whenever the lockup clutch, which is mounted on the side of that pump drive, engages, it forces oil behind this piston. It clamps this disc in here, and then you have direct drive. The torque converter is no longer being a torque converter, no longer slips. But this truck, every time it shifts, that thing engages or disengages and re-engages, and it all rides on this one disc. So We're going to go ahead and lift up this pump drive housing because I'm going to knock out that divider plate so I can show you guys that. And then I also want to talk about one thing real quick on these. So this is the older style housing. Cat had a service, I don't even know if they had a service letter on it, but they had a service magazine article come out. And on, let's see, what side is this? Oh, so on the other side, they would crack right here and they would break eventually. I have seen one where this side here, the driver's side, broke completely. And I think what happened is the operator either got in an accident or he dropped down into a hole and like landed like really hard and it broke this whole casting out. But usually it's on this other side. Let me get over here. It's on this other side. And we look for cracks here and we look for cracks all down around here because this thing will crack out. If you see how square this is, it comes almost to a right angle, to a 90-degree angle. It's too much stress here. So you've got this 2,600 pound transmission, a torque converter, and then you've got the rear of a C15 engine, all rides on these motor mounts. So the rear of the engine on these rock trucks doesn't have motor mounts. You have a motor mount in the front and then the transmission mounts, and that's what holds the engine up. So you've got a 3,000 pound engine, a 2,600 pound transmission hanging on these. And so the new style ones, they put a lot more material in here. It comes out to about here and it kind of goes in like this. You know, they webbed it in more. They brought it out at a bigger angle. So you have a lot bigger footprint. It even actually goes around this hole here for the separator plate. So a lot of these, anymore when I take them apart, I take them down to a buddy of mine, Greg Thompson, who does cast iron welding. This guy's an artist with cast iron, and I'll have him build these up and then totally reinforce this. And then, but when we do that, then we have to take the whole housing into the machine shop and have to re-true up the center where the separator plate goes in because it'll draw and do some weird stuff. Now this one's already been beefed up here. It was beefed up with some steel rod. So I'm going to talk to the owner. I doubt he's going to want to do anything with it. I think it's fine how it is because it really is a good job beefing this up. So we will still clean this up very well and make sure there's no cracks in there too. Because if it is starting to crack, we will get it repaired. But as it stands now, it may stay how it is. All right, he's got the welder going. So what I'm going to do before we pick it up, I'm going to get this bar down in here. All right, I just popped that plate out, and now we'll lift that housing up, and then I'll show you guys that plate. All right, you can set it back down. All right, this is the separator plate I was talking about. It's got an O-ring on the outside, and it's got a lip seal on the inside. And those plastic cones that I was talking to you guys about. So here's my collection of seal protectors from doing these transmissions. And when we first bought these rock trucks, they didn't even give you one of these. They told you to buy one. It was in the service manual to buy a steel one. And then after a few years, they started giving them to you with the seals. And I know this isn't all of them because that's only 20. How many would I count over 20 of those? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 20. Yeah, 19 or 20 of them. Yeah, I know there's been more than that. But anyways, Kat, you should be ashamed of yourself. Back of actually this gear on the torque converter. So this is where the seal rides. This lip seal rides on here on this surface. So they give you this to set over the gear, and then when you're reassembling it, you set the separator plate down on top of the torque converter before you set that on. And then when this gets in place, that's when you have to get a screwdriver inside these holes and kind of pry the plate down a little bit to get it into place. And then you put those tapered bolts in there, and that holds a separator plate in there. And this keeps all the transmission oil in the transmission and away from the flywheel. So that's why I've got 30 of these things, because every transmission I do, they give me one of these. So I was all done filming the footage I needed for this torque converter disassembly. And then I'd forgotten to show you guys this thing here, this coupling that's mounted to inside the torque converter. So this thing is, they call it a coupling. I've seen them on other pieces of heavy equipment where it's actually, some of them they use it directly as the coupling between the engine and the drop box or transfer case. In this one here, it's just inside the torque converter, and it's got these springs in here. It's made just to cushion or dampen it, you know, for when it goes into gear, just so it's not such a hard slam. So this one here, if you see these bolts right here, they're a 1/4 inch bolt. They're real small. I think there's 24 of them. This is the old style one, and they went away from these a long time ago. They went away from these, I don't know, 10 years ago at least, 10 to 12 years ago, probably longer than that. And I would reuse. I have seen problems with them. I've seen them shear all these bolts before, but I have seen them last a long time too. But this one, I can't reuse it because it's got a broken spring in it. Let me pull this out of here. Let me see if I can find the broken spring. Right here. So this spring here is broken and it's kind of winding around itself. So there's actually two springs that are like in each one of these little slots here. And this one here, you can see it's broken. It's been broken for a little while. Well, you can't get the parts for these ones anymore. And I don't know. So here's the new style one. And you can tell the new style ones, they have a 3/8 bolt. And they've got 12 bolts. And I've noticed all of them that I've seen, even for the smaller trucks, they went to a 12 bolt setup and with bigger bolts. And I think that, I'm pretty sure these springs are different because these ones do look beefier. Now this one here, you can totally rebuild this. You can buy the bolts, you can buy the springs, you can rebuild this. This one here, they don't support it anymore. And in fact, here's another broken spring, look at that. So I hated to have to do this, and I couldn't find a used one on the market either. But just in this transmission, I've spent about $9,000 in parts for the transmission and torque converter for discs and parts and whatever. Plus some used stuff that I had on hand that I sold them, a few $1,000s worth. I had to buy this for it as well, and well, this one. And that's 3,000 bucks right there. That's just outrageous amount of money for what that is. But it's all I can. It's the only option I had. So it kind of sucks, but that's just the way it goes. So that's just one more part in these torque converters that I missed when I did the original filming. So I'm slipping it in here in the video just so you guys can see it. It's kind of an important part of it, I guess. Anyways, that's it for this video. Hope it's interesting. And please like and subscribe and share the video if you have any friends that are interested in this kind of stuff. And have a good day.